started off as a PG podcast, but then Devin just kept on dropping shits and fucks, and now...
That's right. We are live.
The ghost faced himself, Brandon Tanev.
This isn't like the start of last season when it looked like the Canucks were just a beer league team not playing defense at all. And just before Chris goes, no, I'm kidding, Chris, you can actually go now.
no, hold on.
We have to give more time for coming on late. So.
I still had, hold on. All right. Chris, go, and then I got something else to say at the end.
So, an elf and a midget in 2 back-to-back games. He's definitely on a friendship tour for sure.
I'm okay with him being, the 6'7" defenseman. No! He is a AHL defenseman right now.
Look, Shonky, don't mind Devin, okay? We all struggle with Devin, so you know.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Shifts and Pucks podcast. Of course, you can follow us on Twitter at Shifts and Pucks, Facebook.com, Shifts and Pucks, YouTube.com, Shifts and Pucks, Twitch.com, Shifts and Pucks. Subscribe wherever you get your audio, as well as on the Area 51 Sports Network. It is a very pleasant 25 degrees and just in the outskirts of the boundary of Burnaby, just around Metrotown. We're here talking some hockey as we are, as of this right now, 26 and a half hours away from free agency. The deck got severely changed about an hour ago, and we'll start there. But we're going to focus. Last night, we spent a lot more time focusing on the Flames. If you want to listen to most of what we talked about with the Flames, which is actually still relevant because I think the next step, we talked about the next step, what that next step is, but we'll get into the news of the day here in a moment. But from way up north in Hudson's Hope, British Columbia, in between two beds, that sounded weird, but I said it anyway. Hello, Chris. How are you doing?
Hello, Kevin. I'm doing well. I'm glad that it's my last day up in Hudson's Hope. Tomorrow I'll be making the 12-and-a-half-hour drive back to West Kelowna and to sleep in my own bed. But it is currently a nice, cool 22 degrees, but I will be heading home to a nice, balmy 33.
There we go. A little hot in the town of Kelowna. Sean, what's going on? I feel like it's hot in Calgary in terms of weather, but I feel like there'll be a rain of tears coming to wash away the heat.
Yeah, it is 30 degrees here in Calgary. We do not have an air conditioner here, unfortunately, so it's OnlyFans week here.
I don't want to know. We'll leave that.
30 degrees. It's nice. It's nice and hot here in Calgary. But yes, I feel like there's some tears flowing here in Cowtown with the news that Johnny Gaudreau will not be re-signing with the Flames.
Yeah, so Johnny, okay, it was leaked. We got to start there. I know we are talking Canucks, and I do think this actually we can blend this into the Canucks. Trust me, I'm a professional. But we have to start here. Johnny Gaudreau, this is the big news, I think. I think obviously about an hour ago, Elliot Friedman tweeted out that Johnny Gaudreau had said in an emotional conversation that he was going to test free agency. Brad Treliving just got out off a media call. He said, "We were informed this evening that Johnny Gaudreau will be entering the free agency market. It's a disappointing day. I can assure our fans that we did everything we could to keep him. It's difficult. We have to move on." He said at the end of the year that they would move heaven and earth. It sounds like they did. It's my strong belief, Treliving continued, that this is a family decision. We have nothing but respect for that. I felt that there was a deal to be made, but again, this wasn't a dollar decision. It was a real hard decision for John. At the end of the day, it's his decision. We talked about this last night. We weren't sure if it was waiting this long, but now it is here. I think that there's a lot of Flames fans that are very angry, and Dan brought this up, about the asset management part of this. I guess from my perspective, there's a lot of there's an emotional reaction to this, and I blurted this out a bit in my own brain, but I think that there's still, I have to go with a wait and see. here. I think we need to see what Johnny Gaudreau actually is going to get paid by whoever is signing him. And I think there's a lot more in what the Flames do with their next steps here. I think there's a lot of decisions to be made. And we'll see. I think a lot of this is a wait and see, and there's the emotional reaction to all of this, and there's also, and I feel like maybe there's the pragmatic of this, and let's wait and see what happens. Am I making sense?
That makes sense to me. Clearly, the 8th year didn't mean that much to him if he's willing to take this gamble, but I'm assuming that Calgary probably threw a mammoth deal at him in the last 24 to 48 hours to entice him to stay as like their last resort offer. But clearly he's willing to see what the market is willing to offer. But with how every team is fairly cap strapped, I wonder if he's going to potentially come on back to the Flames if they're still willing to offer him a mammoth 7-year deal.
It doesn't sound like the Flames are an option here. I think he's going east to be closer to family. Everything, when they're saying it's a family decision, a lot of it sounds very definitive that he's not coming back to Calgary.
And home for him is New Jersey area, right?
Yeah.
And there's some indications that's where he's going to end up. There was a report from someone saying it sounds like that's where he is going to end up, is in New Jersey. So
they have a lot of cap space and they don't have to make moves to make it work. So
yeah, I mean it's a family decision. Yeah, I think we'll have to. There's a lot of this you have to wait and see. I think the next steps, I still think though. I think if Calgary the Flames beat the Oilers in the playoff series, I think that this is a far different conversation. I do think Johnny would have found a way to stay because you could have made the argument that we're that much closer to the Stanley Cup. I think right now, one of the things in a hockey thing, I don't know if he feels that they're that much closer with the way that Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl performed in that series. I don't feel I think that has a small part of it to play in this. I don't know if it's a huge part to play. I mean, I'm not in Johnny's head. I don't know what's going on. But the Flames have some decisions to make, and we'll see what happens here. But this is the time that the emotions are here about the Flames asset management. I've already talked about that, but I think the other part of this is this is not the time to panic. This is not the time to sign Nazem Kadri to an 8-year deal or 7-year deal. Sorry, this is not the time to panic, and it sounds like Brad's not going to do that. I think this is the time to wait. I think you explore your Matthew Tkachuk trade options. You see what you get there, and you see what happens next. You still can have a pretty good team. It may not have that same dynamic that Johnny Gaudreau would have, but we'll have to see what happens with Calgary. I don't know what else to say.
Man, if Tkachuk doesn't stay in Calgary either, they're losing their 200-point players in the same offseason. That's got to hurt.
Yeah, but at least with the Tkachuk, they'll get assets back if he leaves this offseason.
True.
The big thing about where the Flames are at, and Kevin's talking about asset management, the Flames are pot committed to this season. They were not trading Gaudreau at the deadline, and once you hit offseason for rights for a UFA player, you're not getting much back. So they were pot committed. They knew that the only way out of this was to get, without losing a lot, was to get Johnny signed. And they did everything they could.
Yep.
So I honestly, I think everyone knows who's watched this long enough. I have been critical of Brad Treliving in the past, but I'm not going to be that right now. I think he's done everything he could, and it just didn't turn out. And that's just the way sports are at times.
We have sorry, Chris, can I use you as an example here? Just hear me out.
I mean, I don't know what you're going to say, but sure.
You and Hannah made a decision to move elsewhere because you felt it was better for you and your family.
Correct.
Why is it wrong for Johnny to do that?
Valid point.
See, I don't think I've seen anyone I follow or talk to about this blaming Johnny. I think it's just more of a resigned, well, fuck.
Just upset that it got to this point. Maybe not
Yeah.
upset at people, just upset at the result.
Yes.
Yeah, there's anger at Flames management though from a lot of people right now. But
I don't get that either, because you looked at the season that they had. The time to move Johnny Gaudreau was last offseason.
Yep.
And
just
they
like
were,
how the Canucks are trying to do with JT Miller this offseason.
So, yes, once they got into the season and they started to win and were battling for the division, there was no way that they were going to move him. So,
yep.
that's why I use the term pot committed.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of this to wait and see. And so let's blend this into the JT Miller part of the conversations. And there's still there's getting to be a little bit more frustration that this JT Miller trade hasn't happened. And what are we doing with JT Miller? How long is this going to last? And all of this. So we did have a trade this weekend that I think probably could have been a JT Miller possibility in terms of, a high offensive player. Alex DeBrincat was traded to Ottawa for the 7th overall pick, which turned out to be Kevin Krasinski, and a couple of other draft picks. Just from my perspective, that's not enough for Alex DeBrincat. I don't think Chicago came away with even close to enough in that trade for Alex DeBrincat. So if you're asking here for a JT Miller trade to happen, it probably hasn't happened because the market isn't there for JT Miller at this point, and they haven't got the trade that they're looking for. And we praise a general manager. We praised Joe Sakic. The hockey community praised Joe Sakic on his patience of handling the Matt Duchene trade. There was how many deadlines passed with the Matt Duchene trade that went? I mean, it went into the season. Actually, it went into October, November until that Matt Duchene trade happened, and he finally got what he wanted. I'm confused why we're blessing Joe Sakic for his patience and angry at Patrick Allvin for doing the exact same thing. If the trade is not there, it's not worth doing just to make a trade. It's the same thing what Brad Treliving said about you can't sign a player just to sign a player. You can't make a trade just to make a trade.
I'm going to say a phrase that I haven't said in quite a while. Canucks Twitter will Canucks Twitter. There will always be upset people about something and will likely blame management for it because that's just what they do. That being said, the general consensus was that if you're going to get the maximum amount back for JT Miller, it was likely to happen at the draft or around free agent frenzy day. So we're still kind of in that period. To me, the period of being upset and thinking that we're getting diminishing value for JT Miller has not come yet. We still have a decent amount of the offseason to go through before you can start legitimately getting upset. But as far as getting peak value for Miller, I feel like probably maybe day 2 of free agency is probably the closing of that window as far as getting the most amount possible back for him. But there's still going to be like other dominoes to fall, like a Nazem Kadri signing as well. I feel like Miller and Kadri are likely to be dealt probably within 2 or 3 days of each other is my general feeling.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of that is there. It's there's still teams that think that they can get a player in free agency without giving up assets here. When you look at the Matt Duchene trade, Colorado in that trade got Andrew Hammond. Okay. Shane Bowers, who hasn't really turned out to be anything. A first-round pick, which turned into Bowen Byram because the Ottawa Senators sucked. They got a third-round pick. Didn't really turn that pick hasn't really turned out into anything yet. Vladislav Kamenev, again, nothing really. Sam Girard turned out to be a great acquisition for the Avs, and then a second-round pick, which I think they ended up flipping anyways. So you have to find a way to get one or two assets back, regardless of what the total value of that package you get in return. If you can get one or two good assets back in a JT Miller trade, it's great. But it really feels like maybe Kevin, you said the phrase, the market for JT Miller isn't there. I think it's an interesting phrase because I think it's true, but not true at the same time. I don't think the market for where Alvin and Rutherford and his management team value JT Miller, I don't think it's there to what they expect.
For the Grand Slam home run type.
Yes. Rutherford had Rick Dollywell had talked with Rutherford today, and he said that there were no offers for JT Miller. And before people freak out about that, no offers doesn't mean no discussions. I think they are laying the groundwork for a trade, and I think it will. I wouldn't be surprised if it happens this summer. And I don't think
there was phone calls because, like, Lou Lamoriello over the draft day is a prime example of that. Sorry, Sean, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, we don't even know whether it was a Miller trade or it was a Myers trade or what was going on there, right?
Yeah,
it was highly speculated it was Miller related, but yeah.
So I think at this point it is. I disagree with you, Chris. I think the value for JT Miller is going to be there for all the summer. As long as you can find a way to make the cap work, they're going to get value for him.
And I wasn't necessarily saying that there wasn't going to be value like after like day 3 of free agency and onward. I just meant maybe like instead of getting maybe 3 assets back, they might only get 2 assets back.
No, I still think that value will still be there. It just might become a little more complicated once some of the cap gets more complicated later on in the season, in the off season. I still think they're going to be able to get the same value throughout this off season, and that's why the patience is there. And I think I went on Twitter and said that I think there is no rush. You don't have to make the trade at the draft. You don't have to make the trade within the first week of free agency.
Yeah, you don't need. Yeah, you have time to do this. I mean, there's a lot of other dominoes to fall here other than free agency. I mean, we've already talked about this. I do think the Matthew Tkachuk situation could affect the JT Miller situation in terms of wherever if someone doesn't land Matthew Tkachuk, they might turn back and square on to JT Miller. And I'm gonna say something that will make some people in Calgary laugh their asses off. And I'm serious when I say this. In a heartbeat, in a millisecond, 2 times on Sunday, 3 times on Saturday, I would take JT Miller over Matthew Tkachuk any day of the week. Seriously. Didn't stumble there at all. Didn't stutter. In a heartbeat. Instantly. Yes, I know he's older, but look at that contract. Go Google JT Miller shifts. Watch this guy play. And then go Google Game 4 of the Flames-Oilers shift in that last minute and watch Matthew Tkachuk's performance on that last minute. Tell me for a minute. You sit there and you tell me that JT Miller would have given that type of effort. Anyway, rant done. I feel better. But I mean, just in terms of Matthew Tkachuk overall, that decision has to happen. Nazem Kadri has to happen. I think the Patrick Kane situation, like if Patrick Kane is ending up with the Rangers, that might change some things.
Well, I think the thing too, though, with all that is JT Miller can play center.
Yeah.
While Kachuk can't.
Yeah,
Kane
exactly.
can't. So they're I don't think that it's necessarily tied into all that. But the other thing is JT Miller was a 99-point player this past season and is making significantly less than Patrick Kane and will
Almost
be making
Kane level.
significantly less than Matthew Tkachuk this upcoming season.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. I think I think JT Miller is a good value acquisition for a lot of teams. Maybe we'll toss something just for insanity's sake because they seem to be doing things. Maybe Ottawa is in on this conversation. Maybe, I'm just saying. I don't know. But they have cap space to do something. Seattle has cap space. I don't think that there is any moratorium, or there should be. I don't know if Vancouver and Seattle are allowed to trade or not. I don't know what the rules are on that.
I wouldn't trade him to Seattle because I don't think there's anything there that I would want, though, that they're willing to give up.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe a Shane Wright or a Benier. Or Beniers, or I'm not sure how to pronounce it.
Beniers.
And Ottawa would be interesting because they've got Josh Norris, who's an RFA, Alex Formenton is an RFA, and it looks like they are trying to go for it here.
Well, Ottawa has an arena deal to try to figure out, right? So I do think that whatever they're trying to do, they need to step up. Maybe I think that Jeff Marek has always thought Detroit would be a player. Maybe Detroit's in on this. I just think there's a lot of pieces in place here that I think that Alvin can be patient. And I think this could drag on in the summer. I really do. I think that there's a lot of high-end players that I think will be snatched up, but there was a lot of RFAs that were not picked up. I'm looking forward to Sean do the goaltending carousel a little bit later when he goes goaltending carousel, round and round, here we go. All of that, but there's a lot there. So I think the Canucks can be patient with this. I think go ahead.
The other thing too is I think they want to see what this free agency market looks like, because that will set what JT Miller's next contract could be.
Yeah, very fair. And I do agree with you guys and see where you guys are coming from as far as like that value doesn't necessarily diminish, and this could go on deep into the offseason. The only thing I have to say is thoughts and prayers to the guy who has to read the text message inbox at 6:50.
The way I look at it is, yeah, I think part of it is they do want to see that, because then they can go to JT Miller and say, look at that market. Here's a new offer. And maybe they do get him signed to a less than 8-year deal, something 5 to 6 years. Even then, I'm still, it's such a dangerous contract here. But yeah, I do think there are going to be other teams that we haven't talked about be in there, and I think Kevin is right when he mentioned. I wonder if Stevie Y is in on, would be very interested in a JT Miller to help take the Red Wings to the next level, because he's watching Ottawa do it. Where's Boston at? And I'm not saying they're going to be in on a Miller. It sounds like they're bringing Bergeron back and they're working on Krejci, but that's an older team. Are they going to continue to be competitive? And Ottawa's going to take a step up. Detroit doesn't want to be left behind.
It's going to be interesting to see how that Eastern Conference kind of shapes out, for sure.
Well, and I mean, the interesting thing is like that playoff race ended in November, basically. So I think a lot of teams, I think there's some ownership that are like, We can't have that next year. We can't be out of the playoffs in November. Sorry. We need to pick this up. And I'm not saying that Ottawa is a playoff team, and I'm not even saying that Detroit can be a playoff team, but I do think I even think the league was like, we need a better playoff race from the Eastern Conference because that was abysmal.
Not only that, but especially and I'm using air quotes here for the podcast listeners. Why did I just draw a blank?
Good job, Chris.
Wow. Hold on. What was... I'm flabbergasted.
Wow.
10 days of work has gotten to me, guys. Mid-sentence, and I just lose it.
But yeah, I think there are going to be more teams in on this than people think. And JT Miller does not, I don't think, I'm 90% sure that Miller does not have, his no trade clause didn't transfer over. So he doesn't really have too much in the way of control there. So the Canucks can find the right partner who's willing to give them the assets they're looking for. Then they can just take it.
Can I just throw can I throw another fun scenario at you here? Another team in this that nobody's talking about that I just wonder about because they do have the cap space and they are going to be losing a scorer that a person I don't like, but he did score. Would the Edmonton Oilers be interested in JT Miller?
What can they offer?
Well, Bruce Boudreau has always suggested Connor McDavid as a good fit. I don't know if that could work, but that's been Bruce's suggestion.
I don't see anything on. I don't think they have anything that would make me want to trade within division, let alone a regional rival.
The only player that is a even remotely potential get that I would be interested in from Edmonton would probably be Hyman. And I still
even then, he's 30 years old and he's on a long-term contract.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it.
There's nothing there.
Yamamoto, maybe.
Again, but what else? And how does that help the Canucks?
Well, they don't have any defense either. I just tossed that name out there, but yeah, you're right. There's nothing there. Unless they want to trade McDavid.
Like in the chat, we've got the Broberg. Like he's a left shot defenseman. They've got Quinn Hughes, they've got OEL, and they've got Jack Rathbone. I don't see him really fitting in, and he doesn't really add much different from those guys.
Dylan Hall is a long way away.
He'd be interesting, but I don't know if that, like, again, what else?
Yeah, you don't need a Dylan. I don't think that that's an answer there either. I just tossed the name out. We've had the conversation with Calgary. Calgary would say no. I think the Flames fans laughed at it, but whatever. Let them laugh.
Again, I don't think the Flames have what it takes either. They've got Zary Pelche and Coronado, great, but I think if you're trading JT Miller, I want a top end defensive prospect that can add something different than what they have on that blue line right now.
Yeah, and they don't have it. No, I agree with you.
Yeah. So even Ottawa, I'm not sure. Like Ottawa's interesting because maybe a Bernard Docker or a Lassie Thompson might be able to make things work, but you still have to add something else. But I think they could work something out as opposed to when you look at that's where I'm at there. I'm looking at, yes, I want a first round pick. I want a good prospect in return, and I want that prospect to be adding something that that's different from what the Canucks have in the system.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. I guess the one thing I will say is I relate to the fans just because it's been such a long conversation around the JT Miller situation. They want something to happen, and I get it, but I don't think Patrick Allvin cares.
Well,
he wants the right deal.
Yeah, and I think part of it from the fan base side of things is they want something drastic to change.
Yep.
On the roster.
Not only that, but we have been talking about the potential of dealing JT Miller, feels like weekly, for what, 7, 8, 9 months now? I feel like I'm banging my head on the desk.
Can you imagine if Tyler was here?
In that regard.
Can you imagine if Tyler was here with this conversation? He'd take that ball and throw it at us. I mean, I guess we'll wait and see. I guess really at this point, what we still have to wait and see. And I think tomorrow will create opportunity, but it doesn't necessarily mean things will happen. Like I mean, sort of my thought process, I think Goodrow ends up with the Devils. I think we've known Campbell is ending up in Edmonton. I think everybody has that. I mean, it's just, isn't it great that there's no tampering in the National Hockey League? I just think that's it's very wonderful that everybody will wait until noon Eastern tomorrow and have not had any conversations. It's just wonderful. I
just want to bring up this comment that came in. I think it's a little, I don't know if this actually works, but if the Canucks could get Dobson, I'd be so happy. I was really happy with the Quinn Hughes pick, but Noah Dobson was the number 2. And I think one thing that Lou Lamoriello did and Barry Trotz did fucking fantastic was they slow played him in the NHL. They let him develop his body develop before rushing him into big minutes for them. But I see Dobson being a high valued asset for them. He's a right shot defenseman who is in their top 4 now. So
yeah, I think it's going to be hard to get Noah Dobson out of the island. I think that will get done. I wouldn't say that Noah Dobson's untouchable, but I don't think they will. I don't think that they're not gonna move him. It's not even easy to get him out of there. I think he's one of their cornerstone players there. And remember, they lost. It's not, I know that Zdeno Chara is elderly, but you're losing Zdeno Chara, you're losing Andy Green. Your defense in general took a step back. It is a bit older. You need Noah Dobson to take that next step. So,
and you also don't have a Barry Trotz there anymore. So part of me wonders if Miller controls a part of this scenario, does he want to go to the Islanders? Does he approve that deal?
I mean, I don't think Miller has a no trade, so I think he just wants to get. I think ideally he does want to go to the States, and probably more out east. But him being on the island, I think would work. But I struggle to see what unless they panic and do move a Dobson, which I don't see them doing. I think it's tough.
Yeah, not with Lou running that ship.
I guess in terms of any free agency moves tomorrow, I'm not expecting anything too drastic. I think they'll probably add a efficient defenseman, efficiently priced $1 million, $2 million in their defenseman.
I don't even think. I think it's gonna, if they sign defenseman, it's gonna be league minimum to $1 million.
Yeah,
I
somewhere
don't think they go much over that.
Yeah.
When you look at what they've got to work with right now, they've got Quinn Hughes, they've got OEL, Luke Shen. I think they're all sort of penned in. I think they do want to move. If they can move Tyler Myers, they will. Tucker Pullman's a question mark. Travis Dermott's probably they're probably looking at Travis Dermott as an option for the third pair. They want to see Jack Rathbone take a step. We've got Kyle Burrows. There's a lot of bodies there. I think there will be. I think if they're going to make a move on the blue line, I think it's going to be more trade than free agency.
And I was just going to touch on that because Dollywall actually got a quote from Rutherford earlier today, and Rutherford specifically said, and I'll pull it up here, we are looking to balance our forward group, do what we can do to get a top 6 forward who pushes someone down. We want to improve our top 12. We will look at some defensemen, but most likely will improve the blue line through trades.
Fair. And I guess it will be interesting to see what the Canucks do in terms of what they're adding in terms of a forward. They've got $2 million projected cap space for tomorrow, so I don't think I think the Andrew Kopps of the world are probably out. I think
it's interesting when you look at the cap friendly projected cap. It's not quite accurate on a lot of these teams, I've realized. When you look at what the Canucks are looking at, when you you go into for those who know cap friendly, you've got the interactive armchair GM thing, and when you go into that and you throw Michael Furland on LTIR and you move players around that are not going to be on the roster, it looks to me that the Canucks have 6.4 to work with.
Well, Puckpedia has them at 3.7.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of there's still a lot of they have more room than I think a lot of people realize, but it's also you have to find a way. You can't be signing long-term deals on this unless you're moving out players like a Tyler Myers or a Jason Dickinson or a Tanner Pearson here, because you need to bookmark room for next year when you're re-signing Bo Horvat and potentially JT Miller if he stays.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, I guess the real question is, do you expect the Canucks to be truly active in free agency? My guess is not really.
They're going to be looking at value deals. They're going to be looking at players that they think they can sign at discounted rates. They're going to outperform those contracts. Show me deals type deal. Maybe even looking at all the players that weren't qualified.
There's a few, right? That's an interesting list of players. Like, I wonder about a Ryan Donato. I mean, I don't think he's not a top 6 forward, but he might be able to push in a 4th line role. I'm curious about him.
If they're looking for a top 6 forward, there's one name that I think they're looking at. I wouldn't be surprised that they're looking at Mason Marchment.
I think Mason Marchment is going to get interest from a lot of teams. By the way, just while we're here, we haven't had a chance to acknowledge the passing of Brian Marchment, former Calgary Flame, former San Jose Shark, former Edmonton Oiler. I feel so sad for the San Jose Sharks organization of what they have been through as an organization, dealing with this while going through the draft. Just from a human perspective, I just find that very hard, and I feel for them. But I do think Mason Marchment is going to be one of the most sought-after free agents, kind of under the radar sought-after free agents. I mean, I think that there's going to be a lot of people, obviously, Johnny Gaudreau, Nazem Kadri, Evgeny Malkin. But I think Mason Marchment is going to be a guy that a lot of teams are going to be interested in. It's a team-friendly contract, good numbers there. I think I could see that too. I see that as a good option for a few teams, and I could see him with Vancouver for sure. And he adds something that I don't think Vancouver has enough of. I just still don't think they're difficult to play against. I don't even think with that defense, they're not truly that difficult. I mean, even from a defense perspective, yes, they have bodies, but I think I would like to see them add a defenseman that is difficult to play against and a forward like Mason Marchment to be difficult to play against. That's why when I was in the JT Miller conversation, I'm insistent on if it's the Rangers that Brennan Othmann be a part of that conversation because he's difficult to play against and they don't have enough of that in the organization. They're still too easy to play against.
I think they've got a lot of the players who could be. They're still learning how to be.
Yeah. Fair.
But it's I think that's one. We've got in the chat we've got Ilya Mikheyev as an option. I don't see him being a true top six forward. I think he's better sort of in that as a more quote unquote middle six guy.
And I think you can wait on him because I think he's going to command too much money in this market, and I think there's other people that are going to. It's not worth it at this point. He's someone you can wait on. He's an August signing or a PTO. I wouldn't even be surprised if he gets a PTO.
Oh, I see someone snapping him up beforehand. But yeah, I do think he might not be the. I don't see I guess I don't see him being a true top six forward, but I do see him being a valued player, and I do like his speed and his size. There's a player out there that I think the Canucks should be looking at. He is a bit of a project. He doesn't quite have the defensive game, which is why he has bounced around. He bounced around this in this past season and then wasn't qualified. But that's Rem Pitlick. He has speed, and I think that's something that the Canucks could really be could really use.
Yep.
And if you're looking for hard to play against, maybe you reunite Horvat with one of his junior teammates in Max Domi.
Is he a UFA?
He is a UFA. He's such a.
He is a bit of a question mark as far as consistency. That's kind of been what's dogged his career this entire time, right? His consistency.
Yeah, and some of his political views and his personal views
may be problematic in Vancouver.
Yeah.
See, I don't see that being as big an issue. As long as he just shuts up.
Almost kind of in the same sense of like how Edmonton took a chance on Evander Kane sort of angle.
I think as long as he's quiet about it, I don't think people will in the grand scheme of things care. But if he continue, if he's
loud, as long as he doesn't talk about it, yeah, I agree with that.
But he still has to perform, and if he doesn't perform, this fan base will say something.
Well, yeah, but again, it all comes down to what does that contract look like?
Yeah,
because I don't think he'll be the demand out there will be, and his contract will be that. I think it will be more of a show me contract more than anything else.
Yeah, there's one other guy, and I'm just trying to find a couple of other guys. Let me toss. What would there be any interest in a Carly Yarncroke?
Ricard Raquel has resigned in Pittsburgh. There, Kev.
Okay, so enough. Would there be any interest in Carly Yarncroke?
He's a fourth liner. Like if Rutherford's quote. We take Rutherford's quote as something that they want to push players down down the lineup. Calle Yarncroke doesn't fit it. He's also.
But if you're thrift shopping, how are you gonna get a middle six guy? I suppose they might have more money than a lot of people think that they do. But yeah, it's kind of interesting to see how much they're willing to spend this offseason.
He is a right shot player who can play center. But if I'm looking at that, I'm looking at a Curtis Lazar more than a Calle Yarncroke, because I feel more comfortable with him as a bottom six bottom line, fourth line center than a Carly Yarncroc.
Fair. I'm sorry. I was looking for one more guy, and I'm trying to remember if he is. I just want to see if he's available. Yeah, keep going. I'll find him.
Yeah, but yeah, I think it all really depends on like what you're looking for. If you're looking for, I still think the Canucks need to add a right shot center, even if that is a fourth line center. As long as they can they can be plus 50% in the faceoff dot. I think I'd be happy with that. I think an Andre Kasha would be a very interesting player to look at.
Yeah, he's hitting the market.
So Vincent, like again, if I think Vincent Trocheck's probably outside of their price range, but he'd be a good ad. Yes, Kasha is injury prone, but that's where you might be able to get him on a discount.
Yeah.
What do we think about Dylan Strome? I like that comment from Biz there.
I think if I'm going after a Strome, I'm going after Ryan because of that right shot. And Oscar Lindblom would be a fantastic ad. He's a left. He is a left shot. He's a winger, but he's solid and he's got some speed. I don't understand what's going on in Philly. I don't understand what's going on in Chicago, but
Philly is a disaster. Just an unbelievable disaster.
Like, it's hard to understand. At least Chicago, it's blatantly obvious they are tanking as hard as they can for Bedard.
Man, when Kyle Davidson becomes the next Tim Murray, it's going to be hilarious.
Yeah, there's only one team that's going to get Connor Bedard, and you know it still is a lottery system, right? So just because you finish in last doesn't necessarily guarantee anything. And I think the league needs to start looking at this because this is, I'm sorry, like you're asking fans in Chicago or whatever place that is playing to pay money to go see a team, and you are intentionally making it horrible. I think the league needs to have a long look at this.
I mean, if they're going to do that, they need to take a look at fucking Arizona too. So,
yeah,
or Edmonton for the last decade.
No, there's mismanagement, which is one thing, but intentionally tanking, which looks like what's happening in Chicago is.
I mean, it's what Buffalo did, and they didn't get McDavid. And then they had to trade Eichel.
Yep.
So
Buffalo is going to be a good team in in about 2 or 3 years. Buffalo will be there. But
I still think there's a lot up in the air in Buffalo. Who's stopping pucks?
Well, Devin Levi will be stopping pucks in about 3 years.
I'm still like with goaltenders until I see them take the step from into the pros and essentially do what Dustin Wolf's doing for the Flames in the AHL. And even then you still have to take that next step to the NHL. There's still a lot of questions.
Oh, totally. There's a lot of work to do in Buffalo. I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
But I do think that they are starting to build an identity. I think that Matthew Savoy pick in Buffalo, I think it's going to turn out to be a pretty solid pick. I had him ahead of my board than Kevin Krasinski personally, but I'm not a scout in the National Hockey League, so I could be wrong. But
what I like about Buffalo is they do have Owen Powell and Rasmus Dahlin to build that blue line around. I just don't know what their center, what they've got up the middle, and if it's good enough.
Well, I mean, Tage Thompson took a huge step. I mean, Savoy's a long way away.
Yeah.
So they're not competing this year. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah, if there's a team that's kind of in that mushy middle or even towards the bottom third of the league that's going to take a step forward, that's kind of in that same area, I'm putting my money on Ottawa, not Buffalo.
Yeah, Ottawa's in a good position here. I mean, you get the Brinkat deal that turns out to be I think it turned out to be a really good trade. I think this is a guy. He's a leader.
Fantastic trade for Ottawa.
Yeah. And I think Cam Talbot will provide solid goaltending for them. And just a matter of them getting that Josh Norris deal signed. I mean, I really like Drake Batherson, and I think their defense is going to take a step, and they should be able to get off to a better start.
The defense is the biggest question mark for Ottawa. You got Shabbat. Yeah, you've got Jake Sanderson stepping in here, but the rest of it's been a train wreck.
Yeah.
Can Bernard Docker or Lassie Thompson step up and be a NHL player this year? One of those guys can do it. That'll be huge for them.
But even that's going to come with some growing pains along the way too.
I want to see an Angus Crookshank take a step just because that's a great name.
Speaking of good names, I'm not sure if we had a chance to talk about this, but what was that pick from Winnipeg?
Rutger McGroarty?
Yes.
Apparently he's quite a humorous guy. They had him on sometimes I watch the Winnipeg Sports Talk show, and they were interviewed him, and kind of compared him a little bit to the Scheifele pick. It wasn't a guy that a lot of people weren't necessarily high on, but Winnipeg was, and they picked him. Man, that's an interesting place, is Winnipeg. That is so fascinating now.
Well, I saw rumors that Montreal's in on trying to bring Dubois to La Belle Provence.
Yeah, I wonder what that would.
I mean, he is one of the premier French names in the league.
Dubois.
So, what happens in Winnipeg is gonna be very interesting for sure.
That's the low key. That's the place the low key that it's easy. I mean, our eyes will be on Vancouver and Calgary. I think the eyes of the league will be on New Jersey, and Philadelphia and out east with Johnny Gaudreau and Nazem Kadri. But Winnipeg is the one place. Like, if you just need to turn a channel to get away from everything, I'm fascinated what happens in Winnipeg. Their set is it's going to be so interesting. And
was it basically they want to keep Ehlers and I think Connor, and that's really hit on the up front.
They need help on defense.
That what's hilarious about that though is they have 5 defensemen making $3 million or more, and they all have at least 2 years left on their deals. So if they need help on the blue line, they're going to have to make a hockey trade here.
And that's great. That's what's exciting. They can make a hockey trade. Mm-hmm. Finally, we can finally see some hockey trades.
Let's send Tyler Myers back to Winnipeg.
For who?
Neil Pionk.
That won't happen. Tyler Myers for Nate Schmidt.
No.
Done.
No reverse.
Give Nate Schmidt the do-over. That's
a really different management system. Maybe.
No, he doesn't add anything to the team that they already have. They
have Travis Dermott can do what Nate Schmidt does,
and let alone they've got Rathbone, OEL, and Hughes, who are all really good skaters and can transport the puck up the ice.
Yeah.
I just loved Schmidt's personality.
Oh, he's a great personality.
And his trademark whoop.
Yeah.
Whoop whoop.
Yeah. Yeah, he was a lot of fun. It's too bad it didn't work out in Vancouver there. I just think, yeah, it's going to be, again, I think all of these, I think if we'll see what happens in Vancouver. I don't really know what else to say specifically about the Vancouver situation. Like Calgary, I think most of this has been on one player in terms of JT Miller and a little bit on Tyler Myers. But
I do have a question though, and it's a two-part one.
Okay.
One is, what is it? Well, actually, no. It's a one part. Say that JT Miller doesn't get traded this offseason. What is a successful offseason for the Canucks if JT Miller isn't traded? Because I'm pretty sure the other answer is that if I leave it blank, it's JT Miller is traded for a haul.
Considered successful if no Miller trade happens.
Well, I guess to me, whether this is a successful offseason or not is if the Canucks make the playoffs. That's when we know.
I'm looking more long term on that than anything else. I think
he's talking more like transaction wise as opposed to how we're going to evaluate it in the long term.
Because if the Canucks can make a few moves and make the playoffs and build off of that, because for me it's not just about making the playoffs next year. We want the Canucks to create a long-term successful process here, not opposed to just making it one-off. Let's look at the Flames as an example here. They made it in 2019. They made they had a great season, made the playoffs, lost to Colorado. 2020, they beat Winnipeg in the bubble, but couldn't beat Dallas. Then they haven't really built on anything here. And that's what I want. That's what I want the Canucks to start doing, is starting to build to success. And even with the Canucks, first year with Benning, under Benning, they make the playoffs with the carcass of the old guard. Then they can't do anything. They finally they get into the playoffs because of the bubble and all that, and they get to the second round and take Vegas to the limit. But for whatever reason, they don't do anything. They don't do anything in 2021, and they start off horribly in 2022. And then just miss. So what are you looking for? Me, the actual question is, what are you looking for to make you feel like the team as an organization has taken a step forward?
They added to their prospect pool by adding a high-end prospect, and they've added a high-level draft pick, a first or a second-round pick. Ideally, a first-round pick. I think that's a successful offseason. If you can go into 2023 with more than one draft pick, and I know that's the ideal, that's a lot of people are trying to do that, then I think that's a successful year for Vancouver. I think that's an offseason. Okay, you've got a couple first-round picks. You're building your draft capital, which has lacked. This was Jonathan Lekkermaki is the first round pick in 3 years for the Canucks.
Yeah, they traded one away for JT Miller, one away for OEL and Garland.
Yeah. So building that draft pool, I think that would be ideal. I think a lot of Vancouver Canucks would be super happy with that, seeing if they can get a prospect. And not overspending on veterans unnecessarily this offseason, showing some financial restraint.
Which I think is, I have pretty high faith that is going to be how this new management regime carries themselves. They are going to be more fiscally aware. They aren't going to give away extra term or extra AAV just to get a guy or to do something. They're still going to take their time to make their stamp on this team, but I have faith that they're going to make the right moves.
So the answer is not add a third Elias Pettersson?
There's an Emilio Pettersson out there, isn't there?
Yeah, his brother. OG's brother is Emilio.
Right.
Pretty sure.
So what you could do
in Pittsburgh? Can
so
we
how
go
do you
Marcus?
okay, but how do you do this? Do you have one Elias come out and say, "Hi, I'm Elias," and then the second Elias, does he be
Hi, I'm
Ezekiel? I'm Ezekiel, Elias's younger brother, and then Eldrod comes eventually.
Chris has no idea what we're talking about.
No.
But to get back to it, for my answer is I think it is the term that Alvin and Rutherford have talked about a lot, cap flexibility. I want to see some of that. So that would likely be a Tyler Myers trade if it's not JT Miller. And then with that, I'm hoping that they're able to get a good asset for that in that trade, because I think they could. I know Tyler Myers gets absolutely ripped to shreds, but he's only got 2 years left at $6 million. And if you're willing to say, if they're willing to retain at 25% at most, you should be able to get good value for a Tyler Myers, because for what he does, he's definitely worth around $4 million in my eyes.
Especially trading Hyde on him is ideal right now, because he probably has played his best season in the last 5 years this past year.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then adding, I would like to see them add some mid 20s players that they can get on show me deals and see what happens. I want to see them gamble on that, on 1 year show me deals on a couple players here.
And I think we'll see a lot of that. I think there's going to be a lot of show me deals this in free agency here.
So and I think because you look at this team now, if they have Petey, EP40, because we have two of them now. If you have him play at the level that he did at the end of the season for a whole season, that adds a few wins, a handful of wins. Even if it's 2 or 3, that helps. Continued development from Quinn Hughes. We saw Höglander have the sophomore slump. Can he step up? Can his underlying analytics can he actually produce? Because if he does, that'll be huge. The addition of Kuzmenko.
Yeah, I want to see both of the Russians kind of be joined at the hip and then play well and get good consistency on like a third line.
If they can find a way to create a better role for OEL, that he can be more offensive, that'll help as well. Which is why I think there is talk about them moving him to the right side.
He's played it before.
If you're potentially having 3 pairs with Quinn Hughes on one, OEL on the right side on another, and Jack Rathbone on your third pair as your puck transporters up the ice, I think that really helps. Then, let alone you've got one of the best goaltenders in the league in Thatcher Demko backstopping this team, and a whole season of Bruce Boudreau. I think there is a reason to be cautiously optimistic if they can get this offseason right. And I think, Kevin, you are right. They need to be harder to play against. And I think that also, not only does that mean adding a player or two that is harder to play, that's also on players like a Podkolzin, on a Höglander, who both have shown in the past to have a bit of a nasty edge. We need more of that from Bo Horvat. We need more of that from players like a Connor Garland, who, in our intro, Chris talks about his quote unquote friendship tour at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, he was hard to play against at the beginning of the year. He was very frustrating to play against, and then he got frustrated overall. Yeah,
so if you can find the right depth pieces, or find a way to add a top 6 forward at a rate that's slightly under market value, That'd be huge. And I think it depends on what the Flames do. Can they? I think they're taking a step back this season. I think you look at they don't have Gaudreau. They're not going to have Gaudreau. Are they going to be able to expect a 100-point season for Tkachuk this year? That's very much a question mark, even if he's on the team. Let alone you've got Chris Tanev having a massive injury that he's going to be cut. He's not going to be healthy to start the season. Is he going to be a fully healthy Chris Tanev to start the season? What's that blue line going to look like? What does Vegas look like? I honestly think that our friend Dylan and his team Anaheim I don't know what to expect from them.
Yeah.
I think LA is going to take a step. They've added Kevin Fiala. They've re-signed Alex Edler. That blue line, I think, will take a step.
They re-signed Kempe too.
Yeah. So, but I think that the Pacific there's an opportunity there for the Canucks.
And I'm not sold on the Oilers. I still think there's a lot of work to be done there.
I look at the Oilers, and as long as they've got McDavid and Draisaitl, they should be a playoff team. And if they add a goalie like Jack Campbell, and they go with Jack Campbell and Mike Smith, or they find another goalie to run tandem with Mike Smith, I think they could be able to.
Is Skinner still in their system?
Right now they've got Skinner and Smith, and I don't think they're comfortable going into next season with that.
The rumor I've heard is that they're going to LTIR or potentially Smith retire. So I
have heard that as well.
So I just don't see Smith being in that picture. So I'm curious if it's going to be like a Campbell Skinner duo in Edmonton.
Well, they better hope that Campbell is healthy, because he hasn't been for the last 2 seasons in Toronto.
That's the biggest issue there. I think why Toronto wasn't comfortable giving him the deal. But going for Matt Murray instead is quite the choice. It could work out well for them.
And I think
because he has proven that in the past, but he hasn't been that goalie in 2-3 years.
It's been a while, but Elliot Friedman brought up a solid point in the sense that both Dubas and Keefe he has history with, as well as their goaltending coach.
Apparently, new goaltending coach.
Sorry?
The new goaltending coach that they poached from the Canucks, Curtis Sanford.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. No, there was a different guy that apparently has skated with Murray in the offseason, but it wasn't Sanford.
Okay, but yeah, the Leafs, that was a big move that the Leafs did, is they brought in Curtis Sanford to be their goaltending coach, and he was the goaltending coach for the Abbotsford Canucks last season.
Yeah, I guess, the Pacific Division, I agree with you. I would say this from a Flames perspective and a Canucks perspective. The Flames yes, they'll take, I don't think they're going to be that 100-point team. I don't necessarily think that they're going to be a first place team next year, but I think they can still possibly be competitive. They've got again, check out our podcast on that. The Vegas Golden Knights, I think they're a mess right now, but there's still some talent.
Who's stopping pucks?
Yeah, exactly. And then you got LA, I think, is going to take a step back. San Jose is not going to, or step up. LA's taking a step up. San Jose is not. Anaheim's interesting. And just to me, the Oilers, the
thing with Anaheim is they traded away half their blue line.
Yeah.
So what's going on there? I think in a couple of years, I like where they're going. And then there's rumors that they're looking at moving John Gibson.
Not to Toronto, though. He said that flat out, not going to Toronto.
I know, I saw that. It was great.
Yeah.
Oh, that made me so happy.
I do have a dark horse free agency pick though. While we're at it,
For the Canucks or just
for the Edmonton Oilers.
Oh gosh, let's hear this, Kev. You always come up with something.
Does Dave Manson's son join the Oilers?
The rumor I've heard is that he's likely going back to Anaheim, but I could see that happening just for the family connection there.
They have the cap. They've got 20. They opened a lot of cap space. Give Ken Holland credit for that.
And now that they don't have
credit because Chuck Keith retired.
And
he found a way to get Zach Castian out of there.
And he would be a natural replacement for Castian as far as that sandpaper bottom six sort of guy.
Well, except he's a defenseman, but still.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Yeah.
But still, you still add that
sandpaper aspect.
But they still have Yamamoto, PRV, and Ryan McLeod to sign. So, yeah, I'm it's not out of the realm of possibilities. This is a way better sort of close to a hot take that Kevin's had than the Seattle will Johnny Gaudreau to Seattle that he had yesterday.
I said Seattle is aggressively going to go after Johnny Gaudreau, and I still think
he's
Seattle,
not going there.
We may not end up there, but I think Seattle. Watch Seattle tomorrow. I think they're going to overspend. I mean, but Seattle, and we forgot to talk about Seattle. They're in this division as well, but the one
they're not going to be anywhere near them.
No.
And is Ron Francis actually going to spend big money? This is Ron Francis.
Look at that roster. He spent slightly big money on bad players.
He overspent last year on Grubauer, Drieger, Larson, Alexiak. But the only thing I would say is what Seattle has to be better, not necessarily playoff contender, but at least be better, because that you cannot this year. It's interesting in Seattle because you've got a bad Seahawks team that's probably not going to make the playoffs. You've got the NBA that might be there within the next 3 to 5 years. You've got to start establishing your place in that market quite quickly if you're Seattle, because once the NBA comes, if you're not good, it's going to be tough.
Yeah, but I think if I'm Ron Francis, I'm not looking at this season as, I think you are looking at trying to add some players.
That's a place would be, if I needed a prove me, show me place, Seattle would be the place to go. That would, if I was a free agent, and be like, I wonder I may have an opportunity to do something good in Seattle. I still love Yanni Gord. He's one of my favorite players out there. We'll see what Beniers does. I don't think we're going to see Shane Wright this year in Seattle. You shouldn't see Shane Wright this year in Seattle. We'll see what their goaltending situation is. That was Drieger hurt. They got to get better goaltending from Grubauer. Yeah. And then, of course, you've got some places that you could move. You could move a Jordan Eberle, maybe. That could be an interesting offseason move that could happen under the radar.
Why do you think Shane Wright's shouldn't be in the NHL this next season? Like, if he was supposed to go first overall guys tend, especially forwards, tend to get that shot in the NHL that first season. So why are you saying hold off on Shane Wright?
Because he had the 1 year off on the OHL, and I think that completely hindered his development. I also think there are some other things that just his play at the World Juniors and the U18s, I still think there's some work that needs to be done. I would not put him in an AHL lineup yet.
I wouldn't rush him. If he proves himself ready, yeah, fine. But I wouldn't rush him. And there's a laundry list of players who have had their careers
severely hampered.
severely hampered because they were rushed into the NHL, and there's a lot. The list is significantly smaller and quite minuscule, honestly, for players who stayed in junior a year too, quote unquote, too long.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're looking, they've got, Seattle has one right now that was probably rushed up to the NHL a bit too early on when he was drafted, and Jared McCann.
Yeah, you have him too.
So, and they also have they do have Matty Beniers. Like, it's not like they have to have him as the star prospect to sell tickets. They've got Matty Beniers. There's no reason to say like because of that, right? If he proves himself, let him play. But if there's no reason to just say, well, he was the 4th overall pick, therefore he has to be up there.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a show me draft anyway. Okay, I guess where else can we go here?
I know that we kind of briefly talked about like the draft and that sort of stuff, but we didn't really get too deep into some of the stuff that happened at the draft. And the one thing that I want to specifically bring up, and I know this is a little bit out of that element, but just from the reaction, Bruce Boudreau meeting, what was his name? Kevin Owens?
Yeah.
Yes.
That was hilarious.
Yeah, just seeing Bruce light up like a 5-year-old, being like, "Oh my God, this is my favorite wrestler." That was to me the highlight of the draft, and it had nothing to do with any draftees.
It was fun.
I think NHL needs to rethink draft because it's not.
Merrick kind of talked about that on the last 32 Thoughts, and I wonder if they do consider a change up.
It's not really good TV when you've got a dozen suits walking up there, and they all have to shake Gary Bettman's hand, and then they all have to shake the draft pick's hand. It's just,
or if you're the Minnesota Wild, forget the jersey.
Yeah. I think there's a better, like, there has to be a better way of doing it. That, and why we're watching this for the draft. We don't give a fuck about the GM of the Year award. Put that in with your award ceremony they had earlier.
Yeah, I think they botched the like trying to separate the awards, or like not separate, prolong like all the announcements of the winners. Like they stretched it out way too long. Just to have it all in one night, and I realized it's felt a lot more awkward the past couple of years just with COVID. But we need to get back to that, like a couple weeks after the Stanley Cup is released, have it in Vegas. That worked. Go back to that. As far as the award ceremony, I mean,
they can move it around. I wonder. I know that there was talk of maybe looking at Disneyland for the draft and doing something like that. I think there's some interesting things that I think they are aware that they need to change the draft overall and just the whole aesthetic of it. It does need to change. So I do think we'll see something different coming forward. I know Nashville apparently is on the list for this year. So, I mean, you can do some Music City stuff and you have some fun with some country music or whatever that way. So,
and I've heard rumors that they might lean more into leaning into the draft party aspects and having like live feeds from the draft parties, and maybe have like the team's representation actually at those draft parties with the fans, as opposed to everyone being in the same arena.
The biggest issue I have with the current setup is the amount of suits that go up to the fucking stage, and it prolongs everything.
Just have if you're going to have everyone in the same arena and do it kind of in the traditional sense, keep it at 3. Your GM and 2 other people, whoever you choose.
That's what Vancouver did. They had Patrick Allvin and a couple of other people come up, and that was it. They were the only ones that did that. Everybody else had a parade of people up, and it just
and the draft kid too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Pittsburgh had a nice touch with Chris Letang making their, after he signed, making that pick. I mean, there's some nice touches to that, but yeah, the crowd is too much, I think.
You can still do that though, as long as it's not a freaking limo's worth of a clown's car's worth of suits.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, of course, we're here
to watch the reactions of the players and their parents. We want to see their parents make out more than the suits.
I forget his last name, but yeah, poor Maverick. His parents steal the show and end up going viral.
Yeah. Poor guy. Yeah. And then Connor Geek.
Yeah, I think his last name was Lamoureux.
Yeah, Maverick Lamoureux. Yeah. And then poor Connor Geeky almost slipping. Yeah. I agree with you. I mean, but I the other side of that too is the scouts do a lot of work and they should be awarded and recognized for that. And I wonder how you add that into that without delaying and making this long show. There's ways to do that. I just don't know how you do that, but they got to fix it because the first round took over 4 hours. Friday's 5 rounds took 3.
Yep.
So
it's ridiculous. Remember the 2020 draft took like 6.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, and they were on Zoom.
It was so bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, getting back to it, yes. We need to get Kevin Owens to a Canucks game this season.
Yeah. Oh, we have some breaking news. Breaking just in. There is someone off the free agent market, which is, according to Frank Saravelli, Evgeny Malkin has just re-signed with the Pittsburgh Penguins.
I kind of figured that's where this was going anyways. I figured Crosby, Sidney would
Sidney stepped in. It's 4 years, $6.1 million.
Yeah. So
sorry, Sean, your harebrained scheme is no longer going to happen.
We could have had the all-Russian line.
And going back to Kevin Owens for a quick second, just because there was a tweet that I remembered. So he actually quote tweeted a NHL draft bot. So obviously it wasn't a real person who tweeted out this. It was like, with the 171st overall selection in the NHL draft, the San Jose Sharks are proud to select Kevin Owens. And Owens, he's like, I play for Bruce Boudreau and no one else.
That was funny. Yeah. So that is.
So yeah, there we go. Malkin's off the board. So that just adds more to the what people are teams are going to pay for centers.
Yep. Yeah. Just Noah just tweeted, "Wish Johnny pulled a Malkin," but we'll see. We'll see what happens there. What else do we need to get into here? We chatted about Murray to Leafs. We chatted about the Ottawa Senators.
I guess if we're still talking a little bit about the Canucks, if we're not totally tapped out there, the fact that they didn't extend or qualify, I mean, both
Higmore and Lammikko.
Yeah, there you go.
I think a lot of that is they just want the cap. They want the cap. They don't want, as Rutherford said to Dollywall, they want to be adding players higher up in the lineup.
Yeah.
And as good as Lammikko was, as good as Higmore was, if you can add players higher up in the lineup, push players down, that makes the team.
Yeah.
Fair, but a guy like Juho Lammikko kind of became a fan favorite, so it kind of leaves a little bit of sour taste in your mouth.
They can still circle back and see what if they're available, but yeah, I think it's more. But I also think that this looks like they do feel that William Lockwood could be a fourth line player for them this year.
Yeah, I think that's certainly something. Yeah, I think they have some plans for him for sure.
And we need a good crash and banger guy like Lockwood.
Yeah, he is a guy that can be hard to play against for sure. I guess the only other thing I'm thinking about here is the goaltending carousel. I think that will be fascinating. I think Washington's going to overpay for Darcy Kemper.
Them trading Vanacek and then not even qualifying Samsonov is just something that you didn't think was going to happen at the beginning of this past season.
Especially considering the fact that they got Vanacek back from Seattle too.
Yeah.
The goaltending situation in Washington is confounding. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, that's they've got still Phoenix Copley, and maybe they're still high on him as a possibility, but they seem to be all in on Darcy Kemper. So I would not be surprised if that happened.
Also, I want to say happy trails to Braden Holtby. It looks like he's toast, and unfortunately, the injury he got this past season, it looks like it might be a career ender.
Was that a knee or a groin for Holtby?
I'm not too sure, but I feel like him and Schmidt got the short end of the stick for as their time as Canucks, and for whatever reason it didn't work out. So
yeah, they both had promise and both could have excelled here in Vancouver, but it was just bad timing.
It's a lower body injury.
So Chris,
a groin or a knee?
Yeah, I was just to say. So the answer to your question, Chris, is yes.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then I'm really interested to see where John Klingberg ends up.
I think it'll be Carolina. I think
that and what will happen with the caveman himself, Brent Burns?
Yeah, apparently there's been quite a bit of interest circling around him, because obviously him and Carlson being in San Jose is redundant and is a hell of an overpay for what they bring.
And that blue line is such a San Jose's blue line, and cap on that is just not. It's a mess. When you look at, they've got currently Brent Burns, Erik Karlsson, and Marc-Edouard Vlasic all making $7 million or more. And they're all the youngest is Erik Karlsson at 32 of those three. And all of them have at least 3 years left on their deals.
And yeah, the only reason why is Brent Burns that everyone's inquiring about is because he's the most tradable out of those three.
Well, yeah, he has a modified no trade clause. Well, Vlasic and Karlsson have full no move clauses, and he has got the shortest contract.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up in Tampa Bay.
Burns, I'll say this, bold prediction. I think he ends up in Dallas.
So they won't play. They refuse to pay Klingberg because they want to pay for Burns.
Well, I think what will happen is I think the trade will. I think they will end up retaining on Burns in that trade.
Also, Burns' offseason home is in Texas, so I think Brent would be a fan of that move too.
Because I think he has a modified no trade clause. He's got he essentially has a no trade clause. Player will submit a 3-team trade list. 3.
Not 10, 3.
It's not a 10-team no trade list. It's a 3 teams that he's willing to go. All right, Dallas, and 2 teams that can't afford him.
Yeah.
Essentially, he's pulling either a Kessler or an OEL.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
So,
Yeah. That will be. I think there's gonna. Yeah, it's gonna be a fascinating. We're 45 minutes away from, the UFA market truly kind of just opening up here that everyone can sign for 7. I think I think with this Malkin signing, I think things just got a little bit more interesting in the sense that there's going to be more people in on Johnny Gaudreau now. That's the big target right now with Forsberg out. It's Gaudreau and Kadri, and so we'll see. And man, I don't know what else to say. Let's bring it on.
Bring
Let's
on
go!
crazy season. Or silly season. There you go.
Silly season it is. If a JT Miller trade happens, we will deal with it at the time. Is that the best way to say that?
Yep.
Depending on how many people we can scrounge up, we might do an emergency podcast. Might.
I'll do a recap of all the free agent signings tomorrow and all of that. Unless there's a JT Miller trade, I don't expect us to be gathering tomorrow. So don't expect that. But and besides, Chris is driving for 12 hours. So.
And I'm not allowed to be like, hey guys,
for work. And then, so keep an eye out. We'll have things going. We'll have our clips up. We'll do our news packs. We'll do all of that. But I think we should leave it there for now. I don't really know if there's anything else to say, but good luck, everyone. Godspeed. How do we follow you?
I am Bearded Canucks 03 on Twitter.
I'm Matt Schneid's on most social media.
Tyler, who we do miss, TNOBLE. Devin, we also miss, still out in Europe. We're trying to get him in with the maximum male models. Watch SmackDown, you'll understand. Gordhouse09. I am KVULE on Twitter. Shifts and Pucks, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. Subscribe wherever you get your audio. We should be back. We are scheduled to do our 1 a week Sunday, so we'll gather everyone back. Tyler, I think, is committed to Sundays. Anyway, we'll figure that out, but watch for that. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the weather in Calgary. Our thoughts and prayers are all with all of you. But
Yahoo!
Yeehaw.
Ooh, hey!
Ooh, hey! Whatever. Talk to you all soon. Bye for now.